Hello and welcome back to the channel. This exclusive coming from Giant Freaking Robot. I'm excited about this. This happened 3 days ago. Where was I? I don't know. In any case, Man of Steel 2 is a reboot? Henry Cavill's Superman origin may be changing. But before we get into this story, I want to quickly thank the newest subscribers. Dev DeWevdy, Allison Washington, Vincent Ordonez, William M. Buttlicker. I love some of these names, they're hilarious. Rampez1 and Phase Tony Bamana Boni. So thank you to all the new subscribers and thank you to all the existing subscribers. This channel is nothing without you. Let's get into the details here. The upcoming Man of Steel 2 film will not be a proper sequel, but will be treated as a reboot of Henry Cavill as Superman. According to a trusted and proven source, Man of Steel 2 will treat the origin of Clark Kent a little differently than what was portrayed in Zack Snyder's 2013 movie. Specifically, Henry Cavill will no longer be portrayed as having killed General Zod. This is very interesting, actually, because this was kind of controversial at the time. People just didn't think that Superman was the kind of guy who would kill General Zod. Now, at the same time, let's not forget that General Zod died in the original Superman movie with what's his name, with Christopher Reeve. Honestly, I had no problem with it then. Maybe it was the way he was killed because in that movie, in a very non-direct way, Superman took his powers away, and Zod sort of tumbles over a cliff in the Fortress of Solitude, and where does that go? Where does that abyss go? Nobody knows. Will he die when he falls all that way? Or will he slide down somewhere deep and end up just starving to death or freezing to death? I mean, when you think about it, that's not exactly a rosy outcome for General Zod, the first time around. I think what people had an issue with was, of course, Superman snapping Zod's neck. But when I watched the movie, I really felt like Zod had kind of pushed him into that. And I actually like the scene where he was Superman against his will. You kind of get the sense that like Zod is not going to stop, that Superman is being forced into this, and that after Superman ends Zod, that he didn't want to. He didn't want to be pushed into that, and he grieves over this action that he's been forced into right away. I mean, he's obviously very upset by having been forced to do this. So, I thought that was interesting, and it actually did not bother me about Zack Snyder's 2013. And if I'm going to complain about something about Zack Snyder's 2013 Man of Steel movie, then it's going to be the death of Jonathan Kent and how I thought that was absolutely it's stupid way. A total waste of the character, a total waste of a pivotal moment of canon, right, in Superman's development, and where in that situation, he could have easily gone over there and saved his father. Like, that could have been a moment where Jonathan Kent lives and doesn't die of the heart attack, which is something that Superman can't control. So in this original origin story, Superman's adoptive father dies, and there was nothing he can do about it. As a result, he decided, look, I have these gifts, and what I can do, I'm going to do. I'm going to use the gifts that I do have because I should be doing something with them. I felt so powerless at that moment, and here I have all these powers that I can use, and I'm also wasting them. So this was a pivotal moment for him. But you could get the same thing out of him saving his father, which is, he has a moment where he asks to make a decision, and he says yes. In this case, the right thing to do is to save my father, to save whoever. I mean, it could have been his father, but it could have been someone else. Say Jonathan Kent turned back to go and save someone else, and his son is already under the bridge and has to make that decision. Am I going to save these two people, or am I going to let them die? And even as Jonathan Kent says, no, don't do it, Clark makes the decision. I have gifts, and I need to use these gifts. I have to do something. Clark Kent melts into the background, and you just see a red blur, or you see a blur, and then almost as if the right when the tornado is going to take Jonathan and this innocent bystander, something swoops in and saves them and deposits them somewhere else, and then Clark comes back, right, real quick and is again in the back of the crowd and trying to figure out what the hell happened, right? And then he's protected his identity, but he's also made that decision that I'm going to use my powers because I need to do this, because this is important enough that it should be done. I don't know. It's just my thoughts on that. Like, I know that was like a big tangent, but that is the big issue that I have, of course, with Zack Snyder's Man of Steel. So going on with this article about Man of Steel 2, has been one of the more mysterious potential projects for the DC universe, with it being uncertain for years whether Henry Cavill, of course, would even be returning to the role. Now we know he is, which is very exciting. It does seem that after the events of Ezra Miller's Flash movie, Superman will not be quite the same character that we know in modern DC movies. So I do think that's an interesting way to change the timeline and say that after the Flash movie, that maybe some details are different. It's sort of it's convenient. It works. They could use that. Now, for a long time, it seemed like Henry Cavill was, of course, drifting to other franchises. He started doing Netflix's Witcher series and Enola Holmes. But he now, of course, does seem reinvigorated to play the last son of Krypton once more. And I'll tell you, here's why. 2 words. James Gunn. Because James Gunn, I think, understands, and I think him and Henry Cavill can agree, hopefully, on sticking a little more closely to the source material. Now, there's plenty of source material to choose from in this case. There's many different stories around Superman to choose from. So you can kind of pick and choose the one that works best for you. You can change a little bit of the details, but you can't fundamentally shift things like, you know, Jonathan Kent's death. I mean, we could have put that off a while and then have him die of a heart attack, but that's not what Zack Snyder did, and a lot of people had some issues with that. Now, while rebooting perhaps the most iconic character of all time in comic book history seems like a pretty big deal, this is also a statement of purpose from the newly formed DC studios, since James Gunn and Peter Safran were granted, of course, the keys to the DC kingdom by Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav. There's, of course, been speculation that these two would steer the franchise in a lighter direction, Man of Steel, which is kind of what I've been wanting. Like, again, you know, in past I've said, look, I don't want everything to be Batman or Gotham for me. So not everything needs to be that. Maybe we shouldn't go as far as the Whedonverse, because Justice League just did not work in many ways. I don't blame Joss Whedon. I honestly blame Warner Brothers at the time for basically having their head up their ass and not figuring out what direction they wanted to go, and then trying to basically take a bunch of existing footage and a movie that had been written by someone else and changing the tone fundamentally after it's been scripted and filmed already with a certain tone in mind. Just going back and trying to reuse footage, and it doesn't work, right? Because the pacing was all wrong, because the pacing was going to be completely different. So honestly, there's a lot of it that just didn't work. I don't completely blame Joss Whedon on that. A lot of that, I think, falls on Warner Brothers. And then we actually see that how well Zack Snyder's Justice League was accepted in the long term, even though it clocks in at like 4 hours, which is too long, by the way. There's way too much in there. There could have been stuff that was cut out because let's just say there's things that are repetitive, and those things, instead of just doing multiple scenes that accomplish the same thing, there were areas where they could have trimmed some of that. But, you know, Zack Snyder was just throwing everything in for the fans. I think it was too much, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. Now, Man of Steel 2, getting rid of the idea that Henry Cavill snapped Michael Shannon's neck with his bare hands and feels really bad about it, is probably a good indicator that they will likely change the conversation about the character. That seems like it would suit the actor fine as well. While there are a few details as available as yet for Man of Steel 2, we have previously reported that Henry Cavill is eager to steer Superman in a more positive, hopeful direction. Yeah, that's what the character has always been about, and that's what the character should be about. Interestingly, while audiences in general disapproved of the choice to have Superman kill Zod and considered it out of character, that happened in the original one, though. Like, when you think about it, like, he didn't kill him directly, but again, like I said, in the Christopher Reeves DC universe, Superman still does kill General Zod. It is actually DC Comics canon that he was forced to kill the Kryptonian general along with 2 others. So, see, there you have it. I mean, it's canon. you know, there was a lot of angst for Superman in having to do that and having to make that decision. And I felt his pain, right? And honestly, that's all I want from a scene, from a story. I want it to be poignant. I want them to be moments where I'm like, holy shit. And then I want to feel what the character is feeling. And I thought that scene did a really good job. The dad dying scene was shit. So considering that Superman has one of the most famous origin stories this side of your parents taking a late night shortcut through something called Crime Alley. Okay. Nod to Batman there. It will also be interesting to see what exactly Man of Steel 2 does with Henry Cavill. It also raises a question of whether Kevin Costner and Diane Lane will still be portraying Clark Kent's human parents, and if Russell Crowe will have any involvement as his Kryptonian father, Jor-El. I'd like to see them all back. It wouldn't bother me. That would be great. While both Costner and Crowe's characters are currently, of course, dead in the films, they could be flashbacks, though. This is a comic book adaptation, so anything really could happen. Yeah, absolutely, anything could happen. At the very least, we're excited to see how Man of Steel 2 gets Henry Cavill back on board and what kind of new, cheery Superman we get. So there you have it. I think I'm excited for a James Gunn reboot. Not a full reboot of Man of Steel. I mean, we don't need that. We don't need to exclude everything that happened in the first movie. But maybe tweaking some things isn't bad, and using the Flash movie as an excuse to alter some things. I mean, they could cut in some footage and show, like, how things changed as a result. You could have a flashback, a cut away to the actual Flash and the Flashpoint movie, and when things seem to change, and then show the sort of alteration to the Man of Steel universe. And I mean, you could even acknowledge it or not. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to cover this, but I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about Man of Steel 2 changing the origin story for DC's Superman, for Henry Cavill's Superman? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Yeah, I'm actually okay with it. I'm on board. Let's see what happens. Honestly, like, I like James Gunn. I like what he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, and like I said, I like what he does. I like his style of movies. It's a little more upbeat, and there's still a little bit of seriousness there. Like, honestly, like, that was the perfect thing about Guardians of the Galaxy, is the tone of it being light enough but serious enough. That balance in that movie. And so I think that's a strength of James Gunn, and I look forward to seeing that strength play out in the DC universe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In the meantime, you want to continue to support the channel, then please click the like, share, and subscribe buttons. We're currently pushing for 1,000 subscribers, so if you're enjoying this content and you aren't subscribed, then please do, as every subscription counts. That's all I have for now, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.